Hi everybody, Zach Giltz here breaking down chapters 3 and 4 of our reading, which gets all into proxemics. In chapter 3, it's proxemics in regards to our personal space, and then chapter 4, proxemics in regards to our territory or environmental spaces. And so last week we talked about zero proxemics, which is touch or haptics. This week we're going to kind of break down farther out from that. And so the classification schemes of that personal space proxemic is intimate space, which is about 0 to 18 inches apart in the US. And that's the space that is kind of reserved for our significant other, certain family members that we're particularly close to, but somebody that wouldn't be weird if you sat down to watch a movie or TV show or something, and you just sat right next to each other. So for me, that's my wife, someone who, if she sat right next to me, kind of, our legs are touching, whatever, it wouldn't be like, ooh, why are you so close? It'd be like, oh, like, hey, how's your day? We'd engage in that intimate space. And then personal space. So this kind of begins where intimate space ends, and that's about 18 inches to 4 feet away. So this is kind of more your friend space, somebody that you're close to, but you're not quite intimate with. That again, kind of that movie scenario, wouldn't be weird if they came up, sat maybe half a cushion or a cushion away from you on the couch to watch the game or something, whatever's going on. Social space or your business zone, as it's kind of reclassified, is about 4 to 10 feet apart. And so you might be in a meeting or an interview. To me, kind of the image that comes to mind is you're in an interview, you're not sitting across from each other with like a 2x4 for a desk. Right, like you've got this nice big desk, you've got kind of the space between you, and you're setting up kind of the expectation for this relationship through the space, which is to say about 4 to 10 feet apart. And then we've got public space, which is you really have no relation with the person that's in your orbit. They're just kind of 10 to 25 feet away, right? You're aware of them, you're not necessarily engaging with them or interacting with them. These are established by E.T. Hall and were established in 1968, but actually I think relatively still hold up today, especially again in the United States. And something that I found really, really interesting from this is that there are subzones within each space to really kind of establish and tier rank the relationships through kind of that space. So again, personal space is probably the one that I think is the easiest to see this in, right? Like I've got a couple really close friends that it wouldn't be weird if we kind of leaned in for a closer conversation, or did sit a little bit closer together, or just that space with really close friends. It's a lot more comfortable to break that closer. When you're better friends with them, you know more about one another, versus somebody that, hey, maybe you've been friends for a while, but you're still kind of, you've got your walls up a little bit, they've got theirs up, and so the space actually kind of can show that pretty well. Another way that I think that this is really useful is in that business zone, right? You have the meeting, you have the interview, it goes well, whatever, and then you can actually kind of bring that tier just a little bit closer to say, hey, I want to keep this professional, but I want to let you know, like, I want to follow up with you specifically. And kind of create a tighter bond within even that business zone or that social space. Something kind of that comes after that in the chapter is following up on personal space, that everybody needs it. It can vary a little bit person to person, but everybody needs it. And it's this bubble or this body buffer zone, which I thought was such a fascinating term, this body buffer zone. You just kind of have, with kids, we teach it with a hula hoop around them, that you want to stay inside your hula hoop, don't go inside somebody else's hula hoop. And that's because infractions to like violations of our space, invasions of our space, can actually really set us off both psychologically and physically, right? So you can increase your anxiety as someone breaks that space. Your heart rate can go up. Kind of our fight or flight goes off a little bit as we perceive a threat breaking into our space. There are variables to this that kind of makes a change in each of these. I'll kind of just run through them because I found them interesting, but there's more things that I want to go through, and we're running a little short on video time. But so age, sex, cultural backgrounds, race, and environmental structure can all kind of change a little bit these spaces that we have within the classification scheme. And then lastly, from chapter 3, what I really want to highlight is this graph that you can find in there about violations of personal space by someone who can offer you a reward, whether that's attraction or power or something like that, versus violations of space from someone who has a non-reward, or might be, they just don't have anything to offer to add of value. And so what we see is as too close is too close. So even with someone who can offer you a reward, if they're right up in your personal space, it gets uncomfortable, it's perceived as a threat, it's not a fun time for anybody. However, if they're close, but not too close, that's kind of that peak satisfaction of like, whoa, somebody who can offer me something is kind of bringing in this relationship a little bit closer. As it hits the norm, it kind of levels off a little bit, and then as you get farther out, it kind of tapers back up to like, oh, that was nice. However, really counter to this, and it's fairly intuitive, but if someone is a non-reward, it's not just like an okay to a bad time. It's like a terrible time. If they're way too close, it's perceived as a threat. Nobody's enjoying it. Even if they're close, but it's not quite up in your face, that's still a negative experience overall. When they hit that norm, it kind of goes back up to that peak of appreciation for the interaction, but it's still not quite as high as someone who can offer a reward. And then again, kind of goes back down as they kind of exit your periphery. And then I'll just touch on chapter 4 a little bit here, but as we get into territory or environmental proxemics, territoriality is a word that really jumped out to me at the beginning of the chapter. And that is that animals, including humans, tend to lay claim to space that they, just take on as theirs and are willing to defend it. There's some good reasons for this, but kind of the again, classifications really fascinate me. I don't know why. But kind of there's 4 of those that I want to break down real quick. And that's public territory, or like a park, that you're not really regulating that space. You're not in charge of that space. So I think of this, I play disc golf from time to time. And a lot of times that's at a public park, right? So somebody can be in what I'm considering the fairway. To them is a great spot for a picnic. And I'm not really within my rights to go and tell them, hey, you need to move it along. This is my public course. Next is interactional territory, which I think the delineation of this was really interesting, that schools are often called public schools, right? Like I went to a public high school. However, if someone who's not supposed to be there shows up, they're kind of greeted more hostilely, right? Because they could be a threat to the school. So schools are actually more of an interactional territory, somewhere where kind of there's an ebb and a flow to the territory, but there's still an order to it. Home, again, is the space. Home territory is where we have in fact laid claim. It is ours, and we are willing to fight or defend it. And then lastly is body territory, or that personal space, right? Tying it right back into chapter 3. So that's kind of where I want to close out today. There's more to this chapter, but we're rolling with it. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing your comments. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day and enjoy your weekend. Thanks.